The following is brought to you by the PLD Projects Network. It's me, it's PLD. PLD. PJ Campbell. Two mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are two mediocre white dudes on film. Hello there.
And we are back once again. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing quite all right. I had a little bit of a long weekend. Many beverages were imbibed.
Oh, yeah. I'm aware that you had a long weekend. You know how I know? Because I had multiple fucking drunk FaceTimes from people at that goddamn bar.
Really? I don't know who would have done something like that.
I think I know who would have done something like that, like the dude on here right now.
That dude?
This dude right here, the dude I'm staring at right now.
Well, if that dude did it, it's only because he wanted to talk to you and tell you how awesome you are. That must be the only reason why he did it.
And it was a beautiful sentiment until Ben Bateman got handed the phone and he goes, Hey, PJ, I want you to know that Halloween is good, but The Rocketeer sucks. But then he took it back and he's like, "No, I love you, man." I'm really proud of that guy right now, and I'm not just saying that because I know he at one time listened to this. I don't know if he's still going to because there is no more Throwdown, so there's no reason to listen to the head writers talk about movies. But it was a nice sentiment, and it looks like you guys all had like a really good time in New York, which is really great. There was like a small moment where I had a tinge of almost jealousy, and then I was like, you know what, man? Nah, no reason to be jealous. I'm glad that you guys are all like out having fun, and like I'd been having my own like decently good fun weekend anyway, so it was really hard to be upset about it. I was just happy you guys were having a good time.
I did miss that you weren't there. It just felt like I had a little bit of a vacancy there, but it's lifetime. The show must go on, as it were. And Ben had a great. If you didn't know, if anybody doesn't have any idea what we're talking about, Ben Bateman.
Like normal.
That's true. His last date of his tour he's been doing. He's got his album release party or last show in back home in LA, but this was his last date in the actual tour he was doing in Brooklyn. And a lot of cool people there, a lot of the Action Army people there. It was a lot of fun. He put on a good fun show. He did some covers. He did some of his own material, including his new single "Stop Sign," which you should go find to pre-sale or pre-save. I don't have the link on me. I can't because it's an audio podcast. So I say a link. You can't click on my voice to get there, unfortunately. But if you look it up, you can find it usually in his Twitter bio and things of that nature. So definitely look it up. It's worth it. It's worth a shot. And he has a great song, and has a great song. And speaking of great songs in movies, in a movie we're going to talk about a little bit. A little behind the scenes right now. We are recording this about 2 hours before we go live on Clive Action. Class Action. Wow.
Clive Action?
Clive Action.
We're doing a Clive Owen.
Clive Owen, yes. That's what it is.
Okay. Cool. Right on. Cool.
Class Action. We're talking about Clerks 3 versus Jay and Silent Bob reboot. And Ben Bateman got his song in the soundtrack and actually in the movie. And that was, when I watched Clerks 3, that was one of my favorite parts personally. I remember the guitar came on and I know the song well enough. I'm like, wow, I got chills. I'm like, wow, like one of my buddy's songs is in a fucking movie.
Moment. It's a really
great moment. It's so good. So
I apologize for past me probably crying on stream while talking about Clerks 3 to the listeners getting this in like real time, because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I'm going to make it through the stream talking about it any other way, because I was talking about it last night at dinner with my parents and was crying talking about it then, which was like a weird thing that I had not really anticipated.
Yeah.
And not that I obviously don't. Wow. The corgis don't like that apparently, but it's really good. I gotta say, not that we're gonna like review it here or anything, but I've been seeing a lot of really strange takes about that movie that I just do not agree with on the internet.
Same, very much so the same.
Yeah, I really, really, really dig it. I think it's such a solid trilogy capper. I think more than that, I think it and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot are two very different sides of Kevin coming off the heart attack and having very specific things to say coming off of each side of it.
Mhm.
And I think that it is incredibly moving. I think it's maybe, I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but I think for the swings that it takes, it might be his best movie.
I had to sit with it a little bit before I say best, but I gotta say, I will say already that it's in the conversation at the very least.
Yeah. I think that the last 15, 20 minutes really pushes it in like such a specific direction.
You didn't think it'd go. That's
right.
That's the best part.
That's why I think, because it takes that swing, I think it's bold. And that's what's so funny, is that I see a lot of the conversation about that specific swing in the last half hour of the movie that seems to not be gelling with a lot of people. And there's a part of me that understands that, but the other part of me goes, it so fits with what Clerks is, and one of the very specific conversations that they have in the very first Clerks movie. And if you know the conversation, like, it makes a lot of sense. And who says the line in that specific conversation stands out to me in the way that the movie takes the swing. So it always just kind of made sense when it got there. And the movie like hints at it all throughout, is the funny thing. And that was another thing. Like, in hindsight, the movie is telling you exactly what it's going to do.
100% of the way. It takes you along with it. But the best part about it to me is that it kind of, it doesn't slam you over the head with anything. It just kind of like gently takes your hand and says, like, come with me on this journey.
Yeah.
And then when it does happen, like, oh shit, I didn't really realize. I thought I knew where we were going with this thing, but you went a whole different direction with it. Mm-hmm. And but it was very powerful either way. If you know those characters, you really, I mean, Kevin Smith has always been kind of a, I can't say boys club. He's got his own club of people, though. His fans are definitely like a club of their own. Like, we know
there's a literal Kevin Smith fan club,
right?
That is a thing. Yeah, like the fans are the thing that keep his whole thing going.
And the fans, if you are in that fan club, even if you don't officially part of the fan, but if you're in that network of people who love Kevin Smith films, like, these guys really feel like you're friends in a way. I mean, I'm not physically a friend. I've never met Jeff Anderson. I've never met Brian O'Halloran and everything else. But when I see them on film, I see their characters. A grown man, I know these characters aren't real, but I still feel a kinship with them. So I feel like every time I go back to them, I feel like I'm seeing friends again. I feel like I'm hanging out with my old buddies. It hasn't been that way. And in this movie, you really start feeling like it's your journey too, and you really start reevaluating your own life and what you've done in your own life in comparison to what they're showing, which is because it's checking. When you check with an old friend, things have happened to them, and then you get to tell them what happened to you. And it's like the same type of thing. I mean, granted, yes, I'm a crazy man talking to the screen like they can't hear me, but it feels that way.
Well, it's so funny. I think people actually they underestimate the power of stuff like that, especially if you're like you and I, who I was much younger when I started watching these movies. So I kind of grew up with the characters, and you met those characters much closer to their real life ages. So you are on a similar journey with them age wise, whereas I'm on a trajectory of I grew up with them. So there's two very specific lines of feeling that go into those different journeys, but they come out the same in the end in a lot of specific ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you and I felt so close to it, because we both had very specific journeys with these characters that led to these moments. And not everyone's going to have those similar kind of feelings and situations with it.
Which is why I can absolutely understand people not liking this film. They're not going to get this film because they don't feel that kinship. I get that to a degree. It feels, but some of the criticism just feels off in some way. It just doesn't feel like it's genuine. It just is like kind of like you're not taking the chance, not taking the choice to like to see it from any other angle. And granted, like, we each have our own experiences. So, like, if you aren't one of the people who it resonates with, maybe it's hard to see it from that angle. Maybe I don't know, but it just feels like a lot of it's just wrong takes, or they're not genuine feelings. They're just kind of like dismissive, and it's very surface level. And I don't think that's a great way to interact with art. I mean, art's supposed to be about how you feel about things, and not just like shallow. This is what it is. You got a feeling, go for it. But I mean, I think
people are no. I think you're right, because I do think that there are people who go to these movies to escape, and it's fair to feel that way. However, it really, sometimes you have to be able to accept that it's okay that a movie decides to take a more real life swing in a fictional world that you love.
Right.
And sometimes we have to come to terms with the way characters we like are treated and the things that happen to them. It's a similar thing that I think we see in a lot of fandoms when we talk about almost anything, really. I remember similar conversations a little bit around stuff like, well, I don't want to say, because now I'm afraid I'm going to spoil things. So I don't want to say how and why, but like, I see similar conversations in other fandoms over things where they don't get behind it because they don't like the trajectory of certain characters.
Right.
But sometimes that stuff is important, and you need to be able to let go of the thing that you want and let you go on that ride.
Absolutely. So what we're saying after all this, go see Clerks 3, and make sure you watch Clerks 3 with a good open mind. And if you do, I can't see how you will not come out at least feeling something, at the very least. But I think you should laugh. I think you'll have a good time, and you'll probably cry if you're like us. But that's it's a good journey to have. I'm very thankful that Kevin Smith has survived to give us 2 solid movies in a row, which some people don't like, but I feel like they're missing the point, and I'm joyous at their release, and I can't wait for more. It's obviously, and I think this is the last Clerks. We have other things.
Absolutely the last Clerks.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go on. But Mallrats would be great. I'd like to see Mallrats 2. I'd like to see Dogma 2. I'd like to see Chasing Amy. I'd like to see all of them get more sequels if we can, potentially. That's what it takes, because Kevin Smith basically said at the end, when he had his heart attack, he came back, he said, you know what? I only have a small amount of time on this earth. I'm just going to take the characters that I love and let's fucking live with them.
Yeah, and that's what he's been doing, and I think he's going to continue that. I think Dogma's the only one where he's not going to be able to get that chance. There's just all the weird
rights issues,
stuff. But like, we know Mallrats 2 is already very close to being a reality, and I think that he's already talked about doing Tusk 2 also, which those have also retroactively become USQ films as we've gone along. I think that leaves only Jersey Girl, Cop Out, and Red State as the movies outside of the universe. But even Cop Out is like metally tied in because of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's a movie that happened within the universe.
Yep. So it's technically in there.
Yeah, so technically it is in there. But it'll be interesting to see the trajectory of where he goes with it. But at first it seems like he's doing another movie outside of it, which is the one set in like the 80s.
I heard
the theater.
Yeah, which would be cool. It should be very cool.
But I'm very excited. Yeah. But yeah, go see Clerks 3. I think it's done with its Fathom events after tomorrow, or actually, when people are listening to this, it may be over. But I think it's being digital very quickly.
Yeah, because not like this is just like Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I was talking to Christian Harloff about this on his Patreon Q&A. He was like thought it came out wide. I'm like, I don't think it's coming out wide at all. Like because that's what happened to Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. He did a Fathom event thing. He did his tour, and I mean, if you can go out and see him with a tour and do the Q&A. It's a great experience. I did it for Reboot. But beyond that, I don't think it's going to come out wide. It just will go straight to streaming at that point, I think.
Well, but Reboots was a little different too. Because Reboot, as it would hit cities, would expand in the city. True. But it doesn't even seem like Clerks 3 is doing that. Like, it seems like it's just been the Fathom event or the tour and then digital.
Right.
And then home video, obviously, because they will do home video because it was the home video sales, which still matter, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But the reboot sales were so high, that's what got us Clerks 3.
Which is why I'm definitely buying Clerks 3 again as well. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That is good stuff. Good stuff. I can't wait to actually do a Clerks marathon. That'd be a great day. It's going to be a great day of.
It's just what I did going into it. Remember?
I know you did.
I watched
you did that.
Clerks and Clerks 2 leading into it, which turned out to be exactly the right way to handle it. Also,
I know
you
view askew at third at some point too.
What was that?
So I'm going to do a whole view askew at some point as well.
That is absolutely happening.
I might do if I do a pure view askew-a-thon, I might not include some of the ones that are kind of tangentially involved because of that, just for sake of time. But otherwise,
no. You got to watch Tusk at least.
But I might watch Tusk. I love Tusk. I might watch that zone though. I might watch it like a
Tusk.
So I'm going to watch if I'm going to watch a view askew-a-thon, I want to all the characters I know and love, like in one group, and then I'll watch Tusk afterwards.
So do you add Clerks the animated series into it? Because you should.
Yeah, I could do that. Although I got to be honest with you, I have to be honest with you. I'm going to say it here, and you might hate me for it, and I'm sorry. I really didn't like the cartoon movie. I did.
I never actually saw the cartoon movie. Funny enough, I'm only talking about the 6-episode.
That's fine. I did enjoy that. I didn't like the Super Bob Groovy movie thing. I really wasn't a big fan of that one, to be honest.
I never saw it. I'll get to it eventually, I'm sure. With that, real quick, I also want to say, if you guys have not had a chance, I know you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, please go fucking see Pearl.
Yes, I can't wait to that.
It's so excellent. I love that we got like a very unexpected trilogy from Ty West and Mia Goth out of this.
Yeah.
Because Mia Goth actually helped write Pearl, and it sounds like she also helped write Maxine, which is going to be the third film that they're doing. Pearl has one of the best sequences of acting that I have ever seen, especially in the last decade, and it's going to be a really big shame that I know that the Academy is likely going to overlook it. Mia is remarkable in this, and it's such a great companion to X, and I actually think it makes X better in hindsight.
That's what a good sequel should do. Or prequel, rather.
Yeah. So please go see Pearl. It actually was made on less than $1 million, by the way, which is also crazy. And it made $3 million over the weekend, so it's already paid for itself. But it's just so wild that it cost it looks so much more expensive than it actually was. Yeah. And it's really impressive. And I'm really loving this series. I'm here for our weird horror trilogies that are kind of just like announced out the gate with like Halloween and this and The Exorcist and what was the Fear Street? Like we're kind of getting these. They're just announcing it and saying "fuck it," we're gonna do it, and that's.
I love that.
It's a nice change of pace. Like I don't know, and they're making them for not a lot, which I think is what helps the situations.
Right, so like I say, they're making it for like the announced, like it seems like you just said under $1 million. It feels like they're announcing these like trilogies for the price of like what one movie can cost at like many studios or whatever. So that's why they can go, we'll make 3 of them at a third of the price. I'm like, yeah, sure, we can do that.
Yeah, just incredible stuff, man. Just incredible stuff. So please go see Pearl. Go see Clerks 3. It's been a pretty good couple of weeks for movies. Yeah, man. But I guess we got to get into it. We
really do. We're actually a little bit on time crunch, given we're supposed to go right into class action. So
yeah,
let's get in and let's go. Let's get to the down and dirty and the earthy, as it were. Trashiness, maybe. Yeah. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you because I do think this is a very interesting film.
Yeah, you do. So here we are. I'm just going to say it kind of up front. Not the biggest fan of this movie, not in the same way that I don't like Resurrection. I think this movie actually has at least more redeemable overall qualities. We're in that film that we are talking about is Halloween 2007, and Halloween 2007 comes off the heels of Halloween Resurrection. Here we are. The last movie comes out in 2002.
Right.
Bombs at the box office, $37 million. I didn't bring any of this up last week because, goddamn, that movie is so bad. I really didn't want to get into the history of it all. But Halloween Resurrection is critically panned coming off of H2O. It makes so much less money than H2O, and everyone involved goes, "Oh shit, what do we do? We've just tanked the franchise." So everyone kind of stalls. They decide not to do a continuation off of Resurrection because how do you come back from that? They don't think there's really a way, which is kind of fair, to be honest. I really don't know how you would have followed it up either, to be honest with you. There was not a lot of places left to go.
No, I feel like this is one of the only things they really could have done. I mean, like, what's your option at this point? You could go back and try to go from Halloween 6, but it's way too soon to try something like that. I mean, this is already done at this point. There was no point in continuing down this path again. It would have been a tread of been there, done that. So a remake actually sounds like a kind of a cool idea. Let's get somebody in here who definitely has his own staple, his own like vision of stuff, and like maybe let him see what he can do. Like him or not, Rob Zombie definitely has a unique style about him. So it's a good shot to take, I think.
Oh no, totally. So they all go to the drawing board and they go, look, the original came out in 78 rather.
78.
It's been 29 years. We can go back and recreate the terror of Vision that scared everybody all those years ago, but we're going to have someone very contemporary like Rob Zombie take a swing at it.
Right.
Because Rob Zombie at the time, he's coming off of things like House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, which are being really well received in horror circles and even pretty well critically. They're not seen by a lot of people. They're not like doing gangbusters at the box office, but people are watching them and they're responding to them.
Yeah.
So they lean in and they go, Rob Zombie, he's a known quantity. Why don't we let him take a swing at doing this? And you get kind of his stable of actors, plus some more kind of horror icon types, but also some really good character actor types. Try to put them all into this world, and let's do that again. But Zombie kind of wants to come at it at a different angle until he can no longer go to a different angle. And that's the problem and we'll kind of get into it. The problem is that there's a very specific angle he's taking that's actually pretty good until it stops being the angle of the movie.
Right, and that's the idea that they had. I mean, there's a lot of places we got to. I mean, like you were saying, it took a long time to get to. They had some bizarre ideas that they were possibly going to go through. There was like a Hellraiser crossover that was talked about at one point.
The one that the fans unanimously voted against.
No.
Yeah.
Even with Barker writing and maybe Carpenter maybe directing, although I don't think anything ever went that far. But there's also other crossovers bringing back Jamie Lloyd. Speaking of that, because speaking of that, we did have Danielle Harris come to the socials recently saying she wanted one more shot at the big guy. So
and she's pitched it apparently.
Yeah, that sounds a good thing to me. Hopefully, to listen to her, because after this Halloween ends, going to have to go a different fashion again. So maybe that's what we do.
You and I have an idea of where we do legacy sequels to Halloween 4, or actually, well, it depends on where Danielle wants to do it, but she's pitching her own to come back and do her battle. But then I also want a Halloween 6 one, but where it's Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Where we pick up the however many years later with Rudd as Tommy Doyle. I think that'd be so great. Just kind of like, let's tie up a bunch of loose ends just for fun. And then, dude, imagine you did one with Hartnett.
I think it'd be great. Honestly, you could find a way to like just combine all three of them. There's always movie magic to be made, and you can have fun with it. I think if it could happen, like look, Cobra Kai. That's a show that should not work. It combines everything of all the worlds of different things, and it works. So you can make it work these days, and potentially that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, there's all that kind of thing. We actually had one protected screenplay, which we'll talk about more when we get back to our Halloween Miss sequels. I want to say it was called The Missing Years, which was going to be a prequel that was centered around what Michael was doing around Halloween 3 era. Like when Halloween 3 was in the thing, Michael was in the sanitarium and stuff. Some time about that. So it kind of could have been an interesting way to continue the franchise as well. A midquel, it would be. And
it's so funny that you bring that up because so much of this movie is about Michael at a sanitarium. And that's one thing I think people don't realize about these films and the way Hollywood works. Studio notes lay around for a long time and pitches and old scripts and old ideas tend to find their way back into these movies, even if they're reboots, even if they're like long delayed sequels, whatever it is. A lot of these ideas tend to live on in some capacity, and you always see that these notes just kind of sit before becoming another version of something, because there was pitches for like Halloween prequels. And that's kind of what this was, but it was a reimagining, taking the lost years or the missing years and kind of tying that in. And real quick, before we continue, this movie is not, it's like well enough received, but makes a ton of money at the box office.
Yes.
And
Definitively,
that was the biggest point of, we actually have something that works on our hands.
Right. Exactly. Let's be honest here. I'm going to call it like it is. The original film, when they came up with their idea, Zombie basically had the choice of remaking it. So we have a film that basically the first half is an origin story. The second half is kind of a remake. And that's how we end up being. And it's kind of a choice was definitely made. This was definitely intentional. It was definitely this is what Zombie wanted to do. You can argue that it wasn't a good choice. And in fact, I would argue that it wasn't a good choice overall. Yeah. But the idea he was given is he wanted to reinvent Michael Myers, because he kind of felt like the character, like same with like Freddy and Jason, that like they become very familiar, because we kind of like, and I think he has a point, because in Resurrection, Michael was almost a joke a little bit.
Oh,
because
100%.
It was so, because he's so familiar with the audience at this point. So it was hard to have that real basic fear that we started with. So that's the choice. We're going to reinvent him and make him scary again. And how did he do it? His choice is the one that I think a lot of Halloween fans have a problem with, and why people will say it's not a Halloween film. That is because the original film, Carpenter had stated that you don't want to know Michael's origin. You don't want to know Michael's motivations. He's just pure evil. There is no motivation. That's what makes him scary. It's not about, I have to do this. That's why the sister angle is not liked in the franchise overall, and the fandom mostly, for the most part. It's all about Michael is just a blank space that you fill with all your fears and all your terrors. Zombie goes against that entirely and gives Michael a completely new background, to the point where it's not out of the realm of normality that you might feel some small sympathy for what happened to him growing up. I think Zombie tries to, along the way, there's a few times where he tries to still showcase, no, you shouldn't feel sympathetic for this guy. He is still the evil fucker. But it's a very weird balance to try to straddle, and he fails more than it succeeds with, unfortunately, I think. Yeah,
so here's my thing with this movie overall, and it's kind of my feelings in general about the movie and Zombie as a whole. Is like, I really like Zombie more as a filmmaker, kind of doing his own thing. I think he's always been better playing in his own toy box, but I do appreciate he takes the swings. I just think he's taking the swings in the wrong franchise. And I will still contend to this day that he would have been better off if he was going to play in any sandbox with any property. He should have been playing in the Texas Chainsaw.
Well, that because it really, Texas Chainsaw Massacre's sandbox is a lot bigger anyway, because there's not as much there's not a lot held to honor, like a standard in that. It's like the first film was a great film, but like Leatherface was very
exactly. And here's the thing, right? Zombie makes more grindhouse type fare, which is part of the reason I like his movies. It's why I love House of a Thousand Corpses so much. It's why I like The Devil's Rejects so much. Lords of Salem, like the ones that he's made that work for me, live in a world of grindhouse films, and the things that I really liked growing up. They're dirty and nasty and kind of mean and a little cheesy, but they work.
Right.
I like that they tried to take a swing with Halloween like this, but the problem is it, for me, it ultimately never feels like Halloween, because Halloween to me is not really grindhouse fare.
Right.
And I feel it every time I watch it. I feel grimy and dirty, and not in a fun way. Like, I texted you while I was watching it, and ultimately, because we actually watched different versions of the movie. You watched the theatrical, I watched the director's cut.
We both have seen these both, but this is for the rewatch.
Yeah, but they're mean.
Yeah,
and Halloween is not necessarily mean. It's cold. It's calculating, but it's kind of thrilling and it's kind of fun, and it's the boogeyman, right? This is not, and it feels real, and I guess that's ultimately the point, and I get it, but for me, it doesn't work. It's the same thing that doesn't really work with me with the Evil Dead reboot. It's a little too real. It's a little too visceral, and it takes the fun out of it.
I guess that's the argument I would make for it. You did bring it up already, but like talking for the first time, because I've always loved your Texas Chainsaw Massacre idea and push. I've always loved that idea, but the first time, I'm thinking I actually take a little bit of umbrage in it. But I'm thinking in my head, yeah, his zombie does fit that world better, but but that's in a way why he shouldn't have done that and done a Halloween instead, because amping up Texas Chainsaw Massacre in that grimy, earthy way doesn't do anything for it. It just feels like another Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie just amped up.
Sure.
Taking Halloween, if you're going to reboot a movie, you're going to remake a movie, we're going to remake this movie, adding your own spin on things is maybe what you should do. Now, again, I guess it's your miles may vary how if it was successful or not. And I know for you, for the most part, it wasn't. For me, for the most part, it wasn't too. I feel very weird about this movie trying to grade it, because usually when I'm in the middle, it's because everything is middle. Like the performances are fine, story is fine, something. In this case, is like there's things I absolutely hate. There's things I absolutely love, which ends why it ends up in the middle. So it's a weird movie for me to judge. But
no, totally, and that's why you're right. You should have someone who wants to take a swing and do that. But I think for me, that's kind of ultimately why I don't gel with it. Mm-hmm. And to your point, yeah, maybe it wouldn't have been different for Texas Chainsaw, but at least then he can play in a sandbox with a world of, we don't know. Well, now we do, because they've did their own version of this, right? Because they definitely did Texas Chainsaw the beginning.
Yep.
But imagine Zombie had done that. That feels more in his full wheelhouse, and I think he could have had more fun, because you're not necessarily... Well, and he seemed to have fun here other than battling with the producers, which is why there's two very different versions of this and H2. Right. H2 was a miserable experience for him, and we will get into that later. The thing about this in particular is that Michael as a character is so known to be a thing, and he tried to change the thing, and ultimately I think that kind of backfires. But with Texas Chainsaw, Leatherface really wasn't built to be anything.
Right.
So I think you could have had more leeway to do kind of what you're doing here with a Leatherface character more than you could have with Halloween.
With that in mind, it would be very interesting. I would be like, if you're going to play the What If series.
Oh, sure.
What if Marcus Nispel had gotten the chance to do Halloween? In terms of, he's the one who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's the one who did the Friday the 13th remake. He seems like he's someone who knows what he's doing. I wonder how that would have gone over. I don't think he's a very thrilling filmmaker, but he's a very competent filmmaker. And I wonder what that would have happened. I don't know. I wonder how that would have gone. Of course, he did Friday the 13th, 2009, and then we haven't had a Friday the 13th since then. So maybe it wouldn't have gone over as well as what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. It's just a weird thing. And so we can get into it and talk about it, but it's just kind of it's a weird thing. I don't know. Like, this movie's a weird thing for me, and it's a weird thing for you, like you said. And I think that's why it'll be an interesting conversation, because I think we're going to finally find, for as hard of a time as both of us give each other on how we feel about it, we're going to end up in a very same place.
I kind of feel we might. I really do feel like we might. Well, let's get into the beginning. We do open up the film, which I will say this film, to a fault, has moments where it really does pay homage to the Carpenter original. Sometimes
they totally remake it in the second half of the movie.
Right. But and sometimes it's beat for beat, and that's kind of the problem. But it works in the beginning. So we have that font in the beginning, and it feels like we're going back. It felt like a breath of fresh air after watching Resurrection. The opening sequence, I'm kind of like, okay, this is a Halloween movie again. At the very, very beginning, like the title card and things like that nature. Mm-hmm. But then we actually get into the film, and I'm kind of like, in the rewatch, it's kind of like I had to sigh a lot. I'm like, this is like we're boiling down the great Michael Myers Tale of Evil to a very cliched white trash beginning.
Yeah.
And that's and I guess the issue is like, if you tell me, oh, we're going to find the origins of Michael Myers, so kind of, okay, cool. I kind of want to see this to a degree, but what would be worthy? What possible beginning is worthy of what we've put into Michael Myers? I don't know if there is something that would have made sense. Like, if he's in a druid cult, like the cult of Thorn, does that make sense? Is he a white trash kid? Is he a kid that's from a perfect home? Does that make it even scary? I almost feel like that would be the way to go. Have him be a kid in a perfect home with no problems, like the perfect life, and he still becomes Michael Myers.
Which was kind of what we heard in the original, right?
That was the intention, right?
Blue collar family. That's what made it scary.
Right.
There was no world where that should have happened to that kid.
Right. Allegedly. That's true. But I will say, first of all, the kid, Dig Freak, or
yeah.
Either way, yeah, Dig Farch, whatever, Faerch. Sorry, kid, who actually has become a rapper, which is interesting. I've never heard him rap, but that's interesting to me. He is a great find. He does exactly what you would need him to do in this material. He actually elevates the material. And part of it is because he has a very significant look about him. It's a very unique, like, I hate to say that I'm knocking a kid's looks, but it's a very just interesting look. It's not like a boy next door, adorable kid thing. It has like this face that's like this, I can't even say strange, but it's very interesting to look at. And you want to see what's going on in his head. I like him in the beginning.
He's arguably the best part of the movie in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's such an interesting performance. And again, I think you're right. Like, you kind of feel like you don't know and you want to know. Like, he plays it very well. Especially opposite Malcolm McDowell's Samuel Loomis. And Loomis in this is so different because Loomis is kind of, when we meet him in the original, he's just kind of like the old crazy guy.
Right.
In this, he's like this cool 70s hip guy that you're just like, oh, this is such a different take. And McDowell is actually quite good. It's such a different performance, but I really like it, especially later in the movie, the more he's interacting with Brackett. And Brackett's like, I don't like you. You've been living off the blood of all these people for so long. Like, you wrote a book about it. This is like, you profited off of the blood of our town.
It's a great take. It's a great take.
Yeah. And so I really kind of like this version of it because it does feel different.
Exactly.
And there's moments in this where it works. That the young Michael, even though I'm going to be honest, I'm not big on he also, like, thankfully they don't really show it, but I'm not really big on he also was like torturing animals in his spare time. Like, I know why they're doing it because that's totally like serial killer 101 type stuff, but it's just like, I'm not big on stuff like that.
It is kind of harkening back to his meal of choice during the original Halloween run. No. I mean, to get eat
totally.
Dogs, so.
It's just because I like animals, so it just makes me uncomfortable. But then, like, I can't. William Forsythe is giving it his all as Ronnie, the stepdad, but I can't stay. Almost all the stuff with his family is miserable to watch.
Yeah. Well, because it feels so. It feels forced. It just feels so cliched. It feels like, okay, so we're going to have to do this to show why Michael is so fucked up. And like, that is again against what we originally were taught. And it's tough to get out of that mindset. And again, though, I go back and forth because like I always go through that circle in my mind. Like, yeah, it's going against the grain. It's something we're programmed against. And I'm like, but isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Try to find a new grain about it. But at the end of the day, all I can say is like all I can give you is my reaction to it. And I'm with you a little bit on that part. Like, it's just kind of like there's something there. It's very unwatchable. It doesn't really, you don't want to see that part of it, even if you are somewhat intrigued by the cast to a degree.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. It just, and again, I think it's just because of what's happening in the situations and the conversations. It's just relatively uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I mean, look, House of 1,000 is very similar. Devil's Rejects is similar. It's not something that I'm not used to with the zombie movies. It just, here in particular, it feels weird, and maybe it's just because I don't know, all the scenes between Ronnie and Deborah just feel a lot.
Yeah.
But it also makes it kind of sweet when Michael finally kills him. Like, dude deserves it.
Yeah, 100%.
But the problem also is, as far as I'm concerned, in the original Halloween, I'm not rooting for Michael to kill anyone. Right. So it's a little weird to also be like, oh, now I'm rooting for him to kill people. You know what I'm saying?
Because and that's where the sympathy comes in. And that's the problem. The sympathy thing comes in. You're kind of like, okay, I get it. Like, I would never go that far, but I understand why this kid gets tortured, and that's why he rebels like he does.
Right. It's just very strange.
It tries to have its cake and eat it too, as I wrote down one of my notes. It tries to do that because he does kill the innocent sister, who is for the most part innocent. Yeah, she teases him a little bit. But
that's Jenny from that's young Jenny from Forrest Gump, by the way.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah. Different movie now.
Yeah,
all these movies have differences at this point. God, it's like her and I'll mention her now. We're going to come back to her, but Danielle Harris is in this movie. Yeah. And I had the weirdest experience of my life in the theater watching this because like she plays Annie.
Yeah, she plays Annie this time around.
And we see Danielle like in a sex scene in a topless, and it was like kind of like really bizarre for me because I'm just like, this is like the little girl I saw at Halloween 4. I don't really know how I feel about this whole thing right now. I'm feeling kind of strange about it. But
that's similarly for me, and it goes a different direction. But Daryl Sabra, has a small scene, has a couple of scenes in this movie. He's the bully for Michael in his early life, and he's out there swearing and cussing and saying all this like vile shit.
Yeah, it's very vile.
And I'm used to him from Spy Kids, like not that long before, to be honest. Like the first Spy Kids comes out in like 2001.
Mm-hmm.
This is only 6 years later, so it's just like this weird thing where I was like, what the fuck is happening? Even when I saw it, because I was like, he was just a kid.
It's wow. It's tough to watch sometimes, and I think honestly, Zombie knows what he's doing. Yeah, like he's totally doing this purposefully too. I think Danielle. I think besides that, I think he just really recognized the talent that she had and like loved her in Halloween 4. I think it was his way of. Danielle loves being in this movie. She's very thankful that she got a chance to come back to the Halloween franchise after being out for 6 and 7 and 8.
Yeah,
And hell, like I said, there's a chance that she was going to return in one of those sequels anyway. So they were the ones that did not work. So I'm glad she's back. But we'll get to Danielle because she's definitely a good one to talk about. I did want to note, you mentioned the bully, and that's how he first begins to beat Michael as a villain or whatever. But getting sympathy for him because he's being tortured up the wazoo. He gets his revenge on the bully, but they use the Halloween theme there for the first time.
Yeah,
and I was kind of like. It's a very interesting choice. I really don't know how I feel about it. Like, is it too soon to do that?
Yes, it is.
I feel it is. I feel like I understand what he's going for to say that the Michael is always there. This is the first way it's coming out in a way. So I understand what he's going for, but I still think they jumped the gun. And I don't think we should hear that theme until he puts the mask on, like goes to work, so to speak. That should be like the job music. But it's a very interesting take for sure. And I like the fact that we kind of don't know what happened there. We kind of like know he beat him up pretty good, but it's not really.
We never see. He definitely murders him, but we never see the aftermath.
Right. We don't ever hear him. I think he's missing, and we don't hear anything about it after that. It's kind of a strange time.
Yeah, that's one of the weird ones, and then it kind of goes into the more we hear about it, and the more that Michael has done these things because he's always been troubled. Like He mouths off at the principal in the director's cut and tells the principal to go fuck himself. Yeah. And that's how he ends up having this conversation. That's where we meet Loomis for the first time because the principal is looking at it like, look, this is a whole thing. Richard Lynch plays the principal, another very well-known character actor who he's quite good. Actually, it's not a lot of time, but he's very good in it.
Yeah.
Just very interesting having him there because he's so, for me, actually, I always think of him from Puppet Master 3.
Of course.
He's the villain in Puppet Master 3. But he's been in tons of things. He's an Alligator 2. Like, he's a dude that if you've seen him, you probably recognize him almost immediately, to be honest. Like, he's just kind of in all sorts of things.
Yeah, he's one of those actors. Oh, it's that guy. Oh, it's that guy. Yeah, that guy. I like to see it. I'm gonna have to watch Puppet Master again. It's been a long time since I watched those movies.
I mean, you could. I'm not going to tell you should, but also you should. But it's just, that's a really good sequence that kind of sets up that he is fucked up. And
right.
People are talking about it, which is great. But at the same time, again, here we are building sympathy for the character again.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so odd.
It is very, very strange. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But, so, okay, well, that's where we are at that point. We have to do that. We have to come back. Obviously, we learn a little bit more. We get to the beginning of the sequence that is basically the expansion of what we saw in the first place of the first film. Which is the Halloween night. And I got to tell you, even with all that lead up, it still feels like it comes down to, so Michael becomes Michael because Sissy won't take him out to trick or treat. That's what it basically feels like it comes down to. And that's an oversimplification of everything, I know, but I couldn't help thinking that, like, at the time, I'm kind of like, okay, so the evil of the world would maybe just have been stopped if we'd gone trick or treating. Right?
Yeah. Which is such a weird choice.
Yeah, agreed.
But here we are.
It's the one we made. It feels like Zombie gets a little, I don't know if lazy is the right word. He's not lazy. It's just like he's choosing some lazy outs, some lazy cliched outs with the thing. Now, he has moments of brilliance. Like we said, there's moments in here that's like, oh, I get what you're doing with this. That's a cool choice. Like the whole sequence we mentioned about Loomis's character in general. That's a great choice. And we made more of. And then we get to go on to where he gets to go in Smith's Grove. And this is the most probably interesting part of the film for me.
Agreed.
We go out of the cliched stuff. We're not in remake category. We get to look into the mind, as it were, of Michael Myers. We're getting the origin story we want, but it doesn't give away a whole lot. So it works perfectly in tandem with the first film for me.
Well, that's what this whole sequence too. Part of what I like so much about it, like this whole time in the sanitarium, is we start to see the relationship between Michael and Loomis and how it progresses, and like Loomis finally even giving up because he's
sad. That's a good moment.
It's a great moment. And the reason I like all this though is because it totally leads to the things that are kind of hinted at in the original. That's the stuff I liked exploring, because it's more of like Loomis saying that he only saw the darkness in his eyes and there was no soul. There was no way to save this child. And so to see this world where Loomis tries so hard, but then finally gives up because he knows that there's nothing to do. Like, I mean, hell, there's a scene that's super heartbreaking where Michael goes full crazy and he kills one of the staffers in the asylum. That leads to his mother just realizing that there's no coming back either. And she kills herself.
Right.
And you're just like, my God, like, it's so intense. And that's more interesting to me because the damage that Michael is doing that we're seeing is having more ramifications on people around him, that it's not just the victims, but it's the people around him. It's his family. It's his mother. It's Loomis. What is he doing to these people that affects them mentally? That's interesting.
Yes, I agree 100%. I love the fact that we get to see. Well, I was going to say that you kind of alluded to it. This part of the film just really, you could put this right next to the original film, and you see you see a real transition, and it works. I love the moment where Loomis gives Michael a hug, like he's like trying to hug the kid and everything else. And like this is where Loomis is now. And it shows, like, by the end where he can't even, like, he wants nothing to do with him anymore because he can't reach him. He realizes that it's out of his hands. But, like, seeing that transition, seeing that growth or lack of growth in Michael, or in degrowth, if you want to say it, is really powerful. We get to see a kid in the beginning who we don't ever know, and it's fine, we don't. Does he not actually remember what happened that night? Or is he, like, just knowing what happened and trying to forget, or is he trying to just say what he's supposed to say? Like, he's like, what happened that night? So, I got candy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I dressed up in a costume. What else?
Mommy, he's saying it so nonchalantly.
I hope everyone's home is okay, Mommy. How's everybody at home? Like,
oh my God, dude. It's
scary. It's creepy.
And that's the stuff I really like. And again,
Yeah.
that's a credit to the kid playing Michael.
Right.
I'm just going to call him Dag because Farich?
Farich. Yeah, I'm not sure. Dig Farich.
Dag. Dude, he's so good.
He is.
He really is. And that's what I like so much. And it's so funny, too, because this whole sequence has Danny Trejo, who plays this, like, janitor who comes in and he starts working there while Michael is there. And he's so kind to Michael. And here again, this is a credit to a point, but also a detriment to the movie. In the fact that in the Halloween films, I'm never rooting for Michael to kill anyone.
Mm-hmm.
The mean-spirited nature of Michael killing Danny Trejo's character is one of the moments that pulls me out of the movie a little bit because it seems so mean. And in the director's cut, especially because that whole sequence is so uncomfortable because I'll say it right now. I am never pro rape scene in a movie in any capacity. And thank God they cut this particular sequence and changed it in the theatrical cut because I am not pro any of that. And so these two guards decide to rape one of the inmates in Michael's room, and they're like mocking Michael and calling him obscene words that I am not going to repeat on here. And it feels grimy and dirty. And Michael, of course, he kills them, and that's the right thing to do. And again, here's the problem, right?
Right.
He kills two dudes who clearly deserve it.
Right.
But then he goes and kills Danny Trejo, who's been nothing but good to him.
Oh, that's the thing that's kind of curious. You mentioned that, like, because here's the thing too, though, and I think Rob Zombie, I think I hate saying it, so like, because I never say it. He was actually almost too subtle, because in a way, you realize he doesn't kill them because of their violent what they're doing. He does it because they fuck with his masks.
Right.
That's what gets him up and going. So he's all ready to let it go, I guess, until the mask gets touched. So I guess in a way, it's supposed to be that way, but it's too subtle for. You can't have an over-the-top movie like have, and then try to have a subtle commentary. It doesn't work. And I do find that the whole thing was ridiculous because, like, it seemed like it was like they did that. Why would they even do that? I mean, why are they doing it in general anyway? I get that, but like, why are you going to do it in Michael's room? Why would you take it into Michael's room? Like this? It makes no sense. Why would there's nothing good can come out of that. It's just ridiculous. But you mentioned Danny Trejo's character, and he is exactly what we're trying to do as well. He's trying to be that subtle thing because this actually does work a little bit for this reason. There should be more of this in here, which would be, if there was more of it in here, it would lead to a better understanding of the character, I think, is that you build up Danny Trejo as he's this guy who helps Michael out. He's been there since Michael was a kid. He's always very kind to him. And even with this other, redneck douchebag guard or whatever, he's even like yelling at him, like, don't touch his mask. You don't do that kind of thing. And he is so kind the entire time. And yet on escape, Michael doesn't give a fuck and he's still killing him.
Right. And that's what we're creating. Yeah. It's a big switch, but it just seems so weird coming off of killing people who clearly deserved it to not. And again, I understand the point of it. It's just such a big swerve in such a small window of time.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It is. No, you're right.
Right. And so it just feels weird.
And like, we don't ever understand, like all the other times we kind of get this sense of, he's escaping this day because he got the opportunity. Why exactly does he? Like, it's kind of. I guess it's tonight they're moving him or whatever. That's kind of always seems to be the.
That's always it. It's always that Michael's getting moved. I'm never going to understand that. That's fine.
Why are you moving him? No, don't move him. But that does lead to the opportunity. He ends up killing so many people, including Police Academy's very own. I can't remember her name, but she's oh God, what's her name? She plays. Did you watch Police Academy?
I've seen them all, but like,
there it is.
It's been like 15 years.
Leslie Easterbrook.
Okay.
She is the well-endowed police academy trainee.
Yes.
She's the one that all everybody lusts after. She's in this movie, and it totally threw me for loops. I've never really seen anything else except her.
Yeah.
Police academy. I'm like, oh my god, it's a police academy girl. But I was happy to see her in the movie. It was kind of cool to see her in that sequence. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was kind of like, okay, so we're gonna get him out, and then unfortunately at that part, that's where the really good parts kind of end.
Yeah. So here's what's funny is that this is exactly where there's going to be moments of brilliance in the remake portion. There's a couple I actually like the first couple of scenes with Lori and her family. The stuff with her and Dee Wallace is actually really good. I really like that we spent more time with Lori and her step parents.
I also will throw in what you're talking about. I like the choice that they make that Lori is not a goody two shoe virginal final girl. This is like a quite normal. Her and Annie are pretty much the same type of girl. Just happens to be Lori because Lori's a sister, and that's what we're going with. She's not Jamie Lee Curtis, but you couldn't compare with Jamie Lee Curtis anyway, so it's better not to try to make Lori the same because she's only going to compare it to Jamie Lee at that point. This way, she creates a whole different identity, and it's very easy to distinguish them as different. And I think she does a great job. I think Scout does a wonderful job with this role.
I do too. I actually think Scout's really great. And so there's a lot of stuff in there that I actually really, really quite like, in fact, with that interpretation of the character. The problem is that at this point in the movie, we start doing a remake of the first film, but sped up. Yeah. And that is such a weird choice. I also do like the scene with Ken Foree as Big Joe Grizzly, when Michael goes in and kills him at the truck stop, because I'm a big fan of Ken Foree. Again, this movie is huge on using horror icons, and he's from the original Dawn of the Dead. But for people like me, he played Roger in Kenan and Kel on Nickelodeon back in the day. But Ken is one of those guys that he's very recognizable. So one of the smartest things Zombie does throughout the movie is he uses his stable of actors, because, the Chester Chesterfield, who is the guy who runs the graveyard, is played by Sid Haig. You start to see guys like Daniel Roebuck, and you start to see his regulars, Danny Trejo, Clint Howard, Udo Kier, guys that Zombie works with a ton, all appear in this movie.
Although I never was going to expect to see one of the monkeys in a Halloween film.
Sure.
So 357 Magnum. That was a nice little touch of that. I guess playing against type actually works a lot for Zombie too.
No, totally. But it's just very interesting, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So to have these kind of character actors that a lot of us recognize is kind of a nice way of doing it, because you're trying to differentiate. And of course, who plays Lee Brackett? Horror icon himself, Brad Dourif.
What a master class choice that was, because Brad Dourif, I think, is one of the most underrated supporting actors we got out there.
Agreed.
And we'll talk about this one definitively more in Halloween 2, which he actually does. I think he even does a better, amazing job in holding up material in that one.
I'm going to be honest. I think the scenes with him and McDowell throughout the rest of this movie are my favorite scenes in the movie. They're the scenes where I'm less bored. And I'm actually I'm very drawn in, because the two of them are such great character actors, and they work so well together. The back and forth, again, the one I was talking about earlier, when McDowell shows up and he's like, "Look, you need to listen to me." And he's like, "Fuck you, man. This is your fault." Right. And yet at the same time, I don't want you here because you've basically lived off the blood of this town.
But at the same time, he's not. Anytime you have something like that, you have a danger of becoming not a stereotype, an archetype in a way. It's you can go over the top and be a one note character, but he's not, because he accepts the help eventually. He's like, all right, I'll do what you have to say, even though he doesn't like. But it's all subtly very well done. Again, I can't say enough about Brad Dourif. I think he's a national treasure. I love him. It's wonderful.
You and I are on the same page with him. That's why I've always liked him so much. And again, that, him and McDowell playing off each other is great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love McDowell for all his time in the beginning. It's a great character transition, going from the swagger of the 70s feel like he's a 70s psyche you would have found at a bar, hanging out, that kind of thing. And now he's just this older, slightly bitter, but slightly like, just like, I'm going to cash in now because I got nothing left. I can't do anything else. I'm a failure in a way. I think he kind of feels that way. Getting them to go one-on-one with each other, it makes for just a smart conversation to have. I really enjoy it quite a bit.
I do too. I think it's one of the standout scenes in the movie for me, honestly. And also similarly, like, it's a small scene, but I like the scene between Sid Haig and Malcolm McDowell because I really like Sid Haig. I thought Sid Haig was one of the all-time great horror icons and one of the great character actors. I think he's severely overlooked. I think Zombie was very, very smart using him so frequently in his movies during his career before Sid passed away, because it gave Sid kind of a second wind.
Yeah.
As an actor of note in the horror community.
100%. I wish, rest in peace, my friend. He is a legend. He's an unrecognized legend. I think the horror icons, definitely horror community understand and know him. To the general audiences, though, they kind of don't know. I don't think they understand how much he's into it.
I agree, and I can't stress enough, guys. Please watch House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, and also you should watch 3 from Hell.
Yeah.
It's his last movie, and he's very, very little in it because he was very sick when they made it. So his character is dealt with very early on. But Sid Haig is so good in those movies as Captain Spaulding. It's one of my favorite horror performances of all time. Legitimately, Spaulding is actually probably one of my favorite horror characters of all time. And I just love Haig. I just really do. I love Sid Haig. The dude was so good. Just the best. So please check those out. And again, those are peak Zombie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Sid Haig also in a little-known movie called THX 1138 by George Lucas.
Correct, he is. The George Lucas world of it all. Like, honestly, it's kind of funny looking at his filmography because he starts acting in the 60s and just kind of keeps doing stuff forever. Yeah. And he's in, like, Foxy Brown and just things that you kind of recognize that you've probably heard of, or Beware the Blob.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just kind of funny that he does these things, but then he kind of falls off, but then he pops up in like the 2000s where he starts doing stuff again. And he's in Jackie Brown, then he does House of a Thousand, then he does Kill Bill 2. Like, he starts being in more things and you're like, oh shit. Sid Haig had like this resurgence.
Right.
And it was so dope. And dude, Bone Tomahawk, where he plays Buddy, holy shit. He's so good in Bone Tomahawk. I just really, again, love Sid Haig. Sid Haig is the man, and I will never not give him love.
Big Haig fan, absolutely.
Big Haig fan here.
Cool.
Big. And you know what else he was in?
What?
He was in 3 episodes of the OG Get Smart back in the day.
That's true. He did a lot of TV back then. I remember I was over that.
Batman 66. He was in 2 episodes.
I remember that. I actually remember him from those episodes. Much later on. I also he's made some appearances in Mission Impossible, Star Trek, Charlie's Angels. He did a lot. Buck Rogers.
Oh yeah, and of course the A-Team.
Yeah, of course everybody's been in the A-Team.
Right, but that's just kind of the point, right? Is that you and I are just kind of having fun, being like, look at all the things that he was actually in.
Yeah.
Look at all the things that he did that are like nerd shit that more people should know this dude.
Yeah, 100%. Really should. So hopefully if we get anybody out there listening to watch a Sid Haig film, or to appreciate our Sid Haig appearances, that we've done our job, because we want to highlight
the late, great Sid Haig, because the man was a legend.
Yes.
And he lives on forever in our hearts. I love that this is like, usually we tangent on stuff, but I like that tonight's tangent is just Sid Haig. Sid Haig. Sid Haig rules. Let's talk about how great Sid Haig is. That's the kind of energy I want to bring in all things all the time, and which is already making this episode way better than our Halloween Resurrection episode, because I'm like, there was something to praise, and that is the late great Sid Haig.
Sid Haig. Well, let's be quick. I'm going to throw it out there. This is something I recognized before. While the material is questionable and has some ups and downs to it, there is not really a bad performance in this film. And all of the actors,
everyone's
do exactly
good.
what they're supposed to do. They're in some cases even better than good. They're actually great. This material isn't quite up to that level. I want a little more for it, but I cannot fault any of the people in there. They do their best, and they're very entertaining to watch. All of them.
I agree, and it's like I said earlier, right, with the William Forsythe thing. He's doing what he's supposed to do. I hate the character, which is arguably the point, but it's fucking William Forsythe. Like he's not going to turn in a bad performance.
Exactly.
And here's the big thing. We haven't brought it up yet, right? Tyler Mane. So Tyler Mane takes over as Michael in the second half of the film once Michael has become the adult and aged up. And Tyler Mane is a professional wrestler. He's a big guy. So we are suddenly very much changing the look and feel of Michael in this capacity because Michael's notoriously known as the Shape. He's smaller. He's sleek. He's kind of unassuming. Tyler Mane is none of those things. This is a big fucking guy.
This is monster Michael, pretty much at this point. This is the choice they're making.
And it's interesting because, 2 years later, Friday the 13th will put out its reboot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Friday takes its own approach to kind of doing their own version of Jason. And while it's not the Tyler Mane hulking version, they similarly make Jason bigger and like taller, but he's fast.
Yes.
And that's the other thing that they do with Michael in this is Michael is fast. Michael runs. There's a couple of scenes, and I think it's weird because part of me doesn't love some of the idea of this, but part of me does because Michael being hulking and scary and fast and like bearing down on you, that's a scary fucking thought.
It is. And I think it fits the material very well. The monster Michael works in this capacity very well because that's the tension he's going for. And when he starts chasing after you and you see it in the thing, he's actually very fast and very moving, and he is strong as fuck. And like you are scared. You are scared of this Michael. Not just looking visceral. At you. It is very visceral.
And that's why it works.
Yep.
And it's funny because again, like looking at the Friday the 13th, and I guess it's funny that I'm kind of doing it this way and comparing it to this. Derek Mears is also similarly that way. And I think it's the one thing that both these reboots ultimately do right, even if I think Friday does it a little better because I kind of love that version of Jason. There's a specific shot in that movie of him reaching down. Mm-hmm. It's like this low camera angle where one of the characters is struggling and Jason's running at her with the axe and like lunging down. That's the stuff that's really good. And this movie does some similar stuff with it.
Yeah, it does. I remember that. Yep.
And that's what's so good is that it's a reinvention and it works. I don't always love it because it's still weird to get in this one in particular. It's weird, right? Like in Friday, I kind of can get behind it because Jason kind of runs, sometimes kind of doesn't. But like here, it's a weird thing. But at the same time, in this version, it does work.
Yes.
Even if I don't love it as an idea, I can't say it doesn't fully work.
Right. I get that.
So I have to I have to like kind of bite my tongue a little bit. It's really well made.
It is well made. And that's the thing is, like it or not, it's definitely well crafted, and that you can't give it. One thing I wanted to ask you was one question, burning question I had. I think I liked it more because it was a scene between Dourif and Malcolm McDowell. I don't know about you. I'll spoil my version. I absolutely loved the addition that Brackett found Laurie Strode at the house way long ago after her mom killed herself and kept her a secret and gave her away. So the idea that why Laurie doesn't know her past is because Brackett was trying to do a good thing. Mm-hmm. It adds to Brackett's character. It adds to the mystery of the character. It adds to Laurie's discovery of who she is later on. And we go into that a little bit more in Halloween 2. It ends up being a great division between Brackett and Laurie. I absolutely loved this introduction of this little piece. This seemed to me the perfect way to like add to a mythology or make a mythology your own. That does not in any way is not a detriment to what came before. This works on so many levels for me. What did you feel about this?
It's interesting.
Okay.
It's interesting. I don't dislike it.
Okay.
It's interesting. That's the best way to say it. It's interesting. And good or bad, it's interesting.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, I guess anytime I'm getting Dwarf more to do, I'm okay. That's why.
That's my thing is I want more Dwarf. And I think that Brackett gets a lot more between both movies, which I think is a very smart choice.
Yes.
Again, because you have Brad Dourif, you should.
Absolutely. 100%. Just like they should have had more Charles Cyphers in the original Halloween too. But well, that's already talked about.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. I guess the best way to call it is interesting. I don't really have feelings either way because I'm just happy to see Dorf get to do more.
Okay, that's fine. I really dig it.
I really like it. I don't hate it. I don't like it. It just kind of exists, and I'm happy to see Brad Dourif do more.
Okay,
and that'll be the hill I die on forever. Is give Brad Dourif more to do. By the way, everyone, please watch the Chucky TV series. Season 1 is great. Season 2 starts very soon, and I'm very excited.
Me as well.
Boy, yeah. It works. Again, right. I think that ultimately, here's my biggest takeaway, and I'm going to kind of say it as we keep going, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. Even though I don't agree with some of the choices or even gel with it all the time, the takes do work within the confines of, and the choices therein work within the confines for the most part of the movie itself, even if I don't necessarily want this version or always had expected this thing. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's the war I have. I almost feel like we are very similar on this, to be honest with you, but like one of us likes it a little bit more than the other. That's like we both have the same idea behind it. We both agree with the basic idea of that, like there's some stuff that works, some stuff that doesn't. And it's how much you like the outcome that it becomes where do we fall on this as far as like a rating scale, for example, 1 to 11, which we'll get into soon. There's another big part, though, that happens here in this film that, again, I already know where you're going to fall on it. We discover that Michael is not necessarily looking to kill Laurie this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Gets to Laurie, kills a lot of people around her rather. And the killing all the around people is kind of a faulty premise now that we've seen why Michael kills sometimes. Because when people don't do anything to Michael, he tends not to do anything to them. He usually kills people that are involved with something somehow. He kills the stepfather originally for being a jackass. He kills the boyfriend for being one of the reasons he doesn't go trick-or-treating. He kills his sister for the same type of thing. And then later on, it's kind of like, he kills a nurse because she makes some kind of snide comment at some point or she's around. It's kind of weird how we never know what Michael's motives, but he kills all the people. We get to Laurie and he gives Laurie the picture of him and Laurie together as kids. Now, Laurie has no idea what the fuck is going on. Not a clue in hell. What did you feel about that?
It actually works for me. This is a thing that actually works.
Oh, great.
No. Like, I actually like this because the one thing is that throughout the movie, I do like that Michael is always kind of talking to her in the beginning, like young Laurie, and he cared about her. It's like the one person he did care about.
Right.
And so this is the one thing that I actually like as a tweak is that he's not going there to kill her. He wants to care for her because she was the only one who never hurt him. I actually think that's an interesting angle. If the movie had more stuff like this, I think I'd like it even more.
Okay, good. I'm glad you did. I kind of was wondering if you were going to link it up with the crying scene in Halloween.
No. This is different because again, it's a new take, so I can take it out of the that version of the continuity. That's why in 5 it doesn't work for me because it's a continuity of where we're already at, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Here, I can get on board with this idea because they've also established in this movie why he would be that way.
Right.
And so it's actually like a weirdly good moment.
Good. All right. That's a great moment. I agree. I think it's a great moment. I think it works well. And it also works when she rejects him because all of a sudden, like you said, now she has hurt him. One person he's been like wanting to see because after obviously mom left, and I think he must understand that mom killed herself or something because mom's not around anymore. This is the one person who never heard him, and she's betraying him at the end.
Yeah.
So then it leads to a very violent riposte after that. We got this whole showdown in the pool and everything else, and finally Loomis shows up. And he tries. I do like that he tries. This is not the Donald Pleasance Loomis at this point. Obviously, we've made a different Loomis choice throughout. He feels guilty. He feels guilty because his main drive, almost the entire film, is that he feels guilty that he could not help Michael. He could not reach him, but he's still probably the one person who got close enough to try. So he's still trying. He doesn't want to shoot him. He doesn't want to kill him. He's like, Michael, please stop. And he's even willing to sacrifice himself. Take me. I did this to you, not her, kind of thing. And I like that. I like that Loomis is a flawed hero. Very flawed hero. A lot of people take this movie to task because he's not the heroic, like Donald Pleasance type. I don't mind that. Because this is, again, a different take. It's a flawed hero. When it comes down, when push comes to shove, and you'll see this in Halloween 2, even though he becomes more of a jackass in Halloween 2, he also has moments again where he's willing to try to redeem himself to a degree.
No, totally.
He feels genuine.
I love that. I'll say this. I don't love that there's like a double third act here, though.
I hate it. I hate that part.
I really, from going from the pool, and then we start to do the actual remake of the final sequence of him falling off of the balcony. Like, I'm not big on all that. I think it cheapens what the pool sequence feels.
Yeah, I agree.
But I also think it's really interesting that like he basically kills him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And the other thing is it comes from a cheap jump scare where they think that they've killed him and then they're gonna leave, and then he grabs Lori out of the car. Like, it just becomes so much, and it becomes a little too much. And I know that that's a swerve to be like, hey, look, we changed the third act. It's similar to what The Longest Yard does with the caretaker murder.
Yeah, there you go.
Where in the original Longest Yard, for those who haven't seen it, Caretaker, who's played by Ned Beatty in that version, goes into his cell and he turns on the light and the light bulb explodes and he catches on fire and he dies. In the remake in 2005, Chris Rock's character goes in and he does the same thing, and it settles on the light in the same way, and he goes and turns it on, and if you've seen the movie, you're waiting for it to happen and it doesn't happen. So you think that the swerve is, oh, interesting, they're not going that route. And then he goes and he turns on his radio and the radio explodes and the movie continues from there. It's a smart move if you can do it. The problem is that in this movie, your swerve is 10 minutes versus a swerve being 30 seconds.
Right. And that's a different story entirely. I agree. I actually wrote down in my note the post-pool seems extravagant and unnecessary at this point. I'm tired. I was tired at that point. It's not a long movie, but at that point, like, all right, it's good. We're done. I'm good enough.
I would have been fine if it had ended with the pool sequence.
Yeah, honestly. Me too. And fine is all okay. It wouldn't matter. I mean, we would have had I think it also would have been vague enough where they could have started off Halloween 2. The way they finished it now, it made it harder to start Halloween 2. Halloween 2 basically had to ignore the end of Halloween 1 in a way. So maybe it's better to just leave it vague like that. But it is what it is. You can't change it now. But, wow. Do we have anything else we wanted to mention? I do want to say again.
I like I like the fact that we got so many people in this, and to your point, we've talked a lot about the Annie of it all.
I'm going to say Danielle Harris. Yeah,
Danielle Harris is very good. I don't necessarily like the treatment. It feels very gratuitous at times in the way that she's treated. For better or worse, I think that's some of my problems with this movie. Ultimately, become is how gratuitous some of it feels too, which is very Rob Zombie. And it's fair, I guess, to this version of the character. I just don't know if I gel with it. It almost feels too much at times.
I get that.
Yeah, that stuff is the thing that gets under my skin at times. I love the Tombstone stuff in this version of it. with the way that's handled. I don't have a lot more to say. I don't think.
I will say, I will throw out there for as far as the Danielle Harris of it all, I kind of wonder, I don't know this for sure, I do wonder, because Annie was killed in the first one, obviously in the original Halloween. I do wonder if that character was supposed to die, and Rob Zombie just liked Danielle in the role so much that he decided to spare her. That she could maybe come back, I don't know. But I do like that she lives through it this time. Because not only because Danielle did great, and not only because it was an interesting twist, but actually leads to Halloween 2 to be in a good place in Halloween 2. It's good to have her in that, because part of my favorite part of Halloween 2, which we'll get into later on, I do like Danielle Harris in that role again, trying to work with Laurie at that point, and of course Brad Dourif as well. So I think it was a good idea to let her, for whatever reason it was, whether it was intentional or not, it was a good idea to let her live.
I think so too. It's interesting because as much as I like McDowell in this movie, I actually almost wish that they had stuck with Loomis dying.
Yeah, that could have been
because I think it would have been an even more interesting angle going into H2 and then leaving Annie alive. And there's definitely angles you could have taken with that could have been fascinating. But I actually like, and we'll get into it because I really like H2 compared to this one, because H2 feels like Rob Zombie being Rob Zombie and getting to do his thing a little bit better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
And so, and I also think H2 is very interesting because it's like a very interesting case study into depression and grieving.
Yes. And
the director's cut in particular is like so excellent. And again, we'll get into it because there are two very different versions of H2 that exist. One is zombies and one is the unfortunate Miramax Weinstein mandated version of the movie.
And you can't see me, but I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah, I know you are. As you should.
Yeah. Spoiler the fact that we've already had this discussion before. I think that we both saw a lot of good in Halloween 2, and we both prefer Halloween 2 to Halloween. That's what I believe. I don't know if it's going to stay that way when I watch it again. We'll find out. But at least from earlier versions, I think it was more interesting.
Yeah. And I just really am excited to talk about H2. But I'll say this. I'm walking away from this conversation a lot more. I went into this thinking I was going to be like trashing on it and being a lot harder on it than I was, but I'm actually glad that the takeaway was there's stuff I don't like, but I didn't want to focus on it. I wanted to focus on the stuff I like, and I think it made it a better conversation. It was more fun, and I'm walking away with this in like a much better capacity than I was anticipating, because I came into this, I mean, anyone who knows me knows I was telling PLD, I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk about this. Like our text message chain was not great going into this, but I'm walking out actually going, you know what, man? Like I can shrug a lot of it off as, look, it was Zombies Halloween and there is good in it. It's not my preferred take, obviously. Carpenter's will always be the one I prefer.
Right.
But I don't go out of my way to watch this movie, but I can at least see the good in it.
Good. I'm glad. Because I feel like you have come up to where I have been with this film, which is similar to that in terms of like I definitively think that Halloween 1 it'll kick its ass anytime. And I do like a lot of some of the sequels more too. But like I do think while there is some not great parts about it, the good is in there, and you can enjoy yourself watching the film if you focus on that good. And like the good, like I said, the performances in general, the performances are what carry this movie for me. And I'll watch again just for that, for Mr. Dourif, for Mr. Farich, for Mr. McDowell, for Danielle Harris, for Ms. Harris, for Ms. Compton. Great performances all throughout. So.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, then, my folks, it's time to rank the film. It's interesting to see. I'm very interested now where it's going to fall on our little rankings here. We do go from 1 to 11 because we always turn it up to 11 here on PLD Projects. I'll give you a reminder so we always know where we are in terms of everything else. Halloween, we both gave an 11. Halloween 2, I gave a 4.5. You gave a 5.5. Halloween 3, I gave an 8. You gave a 9.5.
Oh, real quick. Sorry, I don't mean to interject. Apparently, they just announced Clerks is getting a extended theatrical run.
Oh, is it?
Because the Fathom events have been going so well.
Oh,
so if that is the case, go see it.
All
Just
right,
wanted
yeah,
to throw that out
absolutely.
there. I hate it because we were talking about it earlier. I hate to interrupt, but it is getting an extended
I love it.
theatrical run.
I am all for it. All right, cool. Halloween 3, I gave it an 8. You gave it a 9.5. Halloween 4, I gave a 10. You gave an 8. Halloween 5, I gave a 4. You gave a 3. Halloween 6 theatrical, you gave a 2. I gave a 2. You gave a 5. Halloween 6 producer's cut, I gave a 3.5. You gave it a 6.5. You monster. Halloween H2O, I gave a 9, and you gave it a 9.5. Halloween Resurrection, I gave a 1.5, and you gave it a 1. So with that being said, Halloween 2007, where's it fall on your scale for you?
Honestly, I came into this thinking I was going to give it something lower than I think I'm going to give it, which surprises me, and I think it'll surprise you too. I think I'm going to give it a 6.
At the end of the day, for two of us have always talked back and forth about this film, and we appear to be on such different sides of the fence. I too am giving it a 6.
What the fuck is happening? What is happening?
If you had ever listened to our conversation about this film over the last 2 years, we've had many conversations about it. You would never, ever say that we ranked this film the same ranking.
No, I would never have guessed we were going to end up in the same place.
Wow, that is so interesting to me. That is so interesting to me. I guess it comes back to whatever you're going to focus on. I just chose to focus on the good of it. You chose to focus on what you didn't like of it, and that's why we always had that conversation about it. But I guess at the end of the day, we both see the same film.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. Awesome.
That's so fucking funny to me, to be honest with you.
That's hilarious to me, man. Wow.
Because I came into this and I was ready to rip it a new asshole. I'm going to be honest. That was a direct quote that I said to someone else earlier.
Yeah.
I was texting someone and I was like, all right, I'm going to be missing for a little bit because I got to go Rob Zombie's Halloween a new asshole. And I ended up not doing that.
No, you didn't. You came in with the love in your heart. I'm
a very optimistic person when I can be. It's just when Halloween Resurrection exists, it's really fucking hard sometimes.
You're feeling that. Hell, you called me a monster for giving it 0.5 higher than I gave it than you gave it.
I know.
Because it is what it is.
Fuck that movie.
I get it. So, all right, folks, and that's it for today. Next week we will delve into Halloween 2, the second Rob Zombie, and one that I think is even more successful due to the fact that he doesn't have to worry about anything now. It's all about where he goes from there instead of trying to remake any part of the first one. This is all about, total new territory for him. So it's very interesting to watch. Although funny, I think you and I might be one of the only two who say that. I feel like everybody else really doesn't like this film. But we'll get there.
Yeah. I also think there's a lot of people who have never seen, wait, which one were you talking about? Kills?
Halloween 2.
Halloween. Okay, I wanted to make sure because my mind, I heard you say it, and then I heard you say no one really likes it, and I immediately went back to Kills because you and I were talking about that earlier. So the thing also with H2, I think, because I always call it H2 because that seems to be the known name it goes by.
Right.
I think most people have only seen that theatrical cut, and most don't realize that there is a drastically different version of that movie that exists.
And I will say this also, it's a drastically different. Halloween 6 had the producer's cut, but this I think is a world of difference between this cut and Halloween theatrical cut. It's even more of a difference than it was between the producer's cut and the theatrical cut of Halloween 6. Yeah. I think it's almost entirely different movie.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the director's cut is actually really, really good in a way that I was not anticipating. And it's funny because for those who don't know, I've had to rewatch. I've actually rewatched both of these this year already because I was initially watching all of my Rob Zombie movies, leaning into what he was working on with the Munsters, and I kind of fell off after I watched the first two Halloween. So I need to finish my zombie watch. So it was kind of funny that I had to watch these twice this year in a way that I wouldn't normally, because like I said, I don't normally go out of my way to revisit the zombie movies, but I'm very excited to rewatch H2 again because I really liked it the last time through with the director's cut. So I'll be happy to watch it again is what I'm getting at.
Excited. I'm excited as well. Well, before we go, I do want to shout out some patrons of PLD projects. We got Danielle Ramirez, Brandon Buckingham, Brandy Parker, Jeff Alterman, John Latrina, and Kelly W. Much appreciated to you folks, as well as everybody else involved with the Patreon at patreon.com/PLD projects. We're getting more and more involved. We got a nice little hangout last week. I'm going to do some more of those as well as do some extra Patreon content. We got some Doctor Who shows we got to do, some more missing sequels from Halloween we're going to do as well. This should be a lot of fun coming in, so make sure you go in and sign up for that. Otherwise, also I'll throw in some plugs. Again, we got Halloween 2 coming up next week. You already watched Class Action. I'm guessing at this point yesterday we did the Clerks 3 versus Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Of course, tomorrow you got Crown Jewels podcast coming from PLD here. We're talking about The Loser in the End, a song by Roger Taylor. I think that should pretty much do it for me at PLD at Paul_Duduzio on Twitter. And of course, the Movie Trivia Showdown. We write the questions for Spectacular, which is coming up very, very soon. PJ,
yep.
Go ahead.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell. You can also find me at the PJ Campbell Network. We just recently were bringing back the PJ Campbell Show. So today, when you're listening to this, it has probably already been live, but we did our top 12 Stephen King adaptations for the show. So go check that out. Myself and Chance Ellison. It's super fun. Chance Ellison also has a football show that, Paul, you were actually on the first episode of. They do that on Tuesdays. So that aired yesterday. Go back and check that out. Left Side, Strong Side. And find me at the Movie Trivia Showdown finale. Again, like Paul said, we write the questions. Be nice to the writers. We're only human. October 1st, the final ever Movie Trivia Schmodown. It should be a ton of fun. I can't wait for you guys to see what we cooked up with it.
Yeah, sounds good. Until that time, though, of course, never underestimate the power of mediocrity. Stay mediocre, my friends. Stay mediocre.
Mediocrity is the best. Bye, friends.